Mr. Abreu, the panel is yours.
Okay, first, thank you for the invitation. I'm Ramiro Abreu from CPEC. Along with Cari, we host the T20 this year in Argentina. T20 is an engagement group of the G20. We are the think tanks there. And we have been working really hard on trying to understand technological change and its impacts on the economy and jobs. Our main conclusion of this research is that there's something really deep going on, but we don't know yet about their impact, about their scope, right? But we know that we used to talk about science fiction, and now we're talking about technologies. When we refer to artificial intelligence, to the Internet of Things, to smart manufacturing, right? We used to think about robots, now we are talking about intelligent systems. So in a way, we know that we are going through a process of deep change. So, but the second thing that I learned is that we researchers and the government, we need to learn from business, because you are driving the change, not us. That's why I'm here to learn, really, not to. But again, I want to hear you just talking about these changes from your own perspective, from the business perspective first. Then I want to move to some policies, or how to create the links between firms and formal institutions, universities, governments, etc. So if you want, Javier, you can start. I want to hear some specific samples in specific sectors about how this change is developing.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. A pleasure of being here. First of all, we see that digitalization industry 4.0 is going to be the key enabler in response to the current trends and for the future. When I talk about the global trends, we see, for example, today we have a global population 7 billion. It's going to be some 10 billion in 2050. We also see that, for example, if we talk about climate change, the 2 centigrades over the pre-industrial era with the current trends is not going to be achieved. So we need to do something in this regard. 70% of the population will live in cities in the future. So this is creating another challenge. And if we talk about digital data, if we consider digital data that was generated, for example, in 2013, in 2020 it's going to be 10 times. So we see the growth there. It's incredible. So what are the responses that we have in terms to tackle these global trends? We see 2 key levers. One is decarbonization, and the second is energy efficiency. Let's talk briefly about these two levers. For example, decarbonization. Today, 50% of the global energy consumption is consuming heating. Then and for this 50%, some 70% is with fossil fuels. Then some 30% is in the transportation sector, and we have there 96% based on petroleum energy sources. And then some 20% in the power sector, and in the power sector we have some 75%, which is not renewable energy based. So we have here a huge opportunity, because some 75% of the total global energy consumption is not using the renewable sources. So one key word, one key action in order to tackle decarbonization is what we call sector coupling. This is a word that we all need to remember, because sector coupling means the coordination, the integration, and the alignment of the different sectors, building, transportation, power, industries. And here is where Industry 4.0, the digitalization is playing a key role, is the key enabler. For example, we see already some very good examples like in in the UK or in Italy, where you take, for example, the energy sources like renewable or solar energy, and when you have that surplus, then using intelligent systems, you are starting to store that already in batteries, which, by the way, but the batteries costs today are dropping by more than 40% in the last year. So this is becoming an economic viable solution. Also, there are some good examples in Denmark in where the surplus of renewable energy is used to heat water or steam and used in heating. Then if we go into the transportation sector, apart from integrating the e-trains or e-cars, there are some systems that are using, for example, this is a very good example in Doha, where the intelligent systems are using the energy when the train is braking, and you can save up to 30% of the energy consumption also in trains. If we go to an industry like the oil and gas industry, the use of all electric and digitalized solutions is producing up to 50% of reduction in the total cost of ownership in this value chain. So huge amounts of energy savings and business models. So sector coupling would be the key for decarbonization. Now, if we talk about the second lever, which is energy efficiency, there the key innovation that we are implementing globally is what we call MindSphere, which is the cloud-based platform for Internet of Things, in which you connect a power plant, a transmission line, and distribution, all industrial devices, all healthcare devices, everything which is connected to the industrial Internet of Things. And then you produce the big data, and on top of that, you can develop any kind of applications in order to do predictive analytics, to monitor performance, etc. Another key concept in this energy efficiency is also the cybersecurity. Of course, IoT is going to be the enabler, but without cybersecurity, nothing will work. And when we talk about cybersecurity, it's not only IT, which is very familiar, it's also OT, which is operational technologies. That means that we have to take care also the control systems, for example, of a nuclear or a power plant that is already working. And this implementation of all the technologies can create in the industrial sector what we call the end-to-end digital twin. I mean, today we can simulate in a virtual space the design, the engineering, and production without even moving an atom of physical resources. Huh? So you already optimize all the production flow before you even start producing. And all of this is creating gains in productivity, which counts for double-digit gains. So it's enormous the amount of gains that we have. So there is a key question here is how do we prepare for this? And one of the things, or one example I would like to share is the German industry is considered a benchmark in robotics, in digitalization, in automation. And there is a study in which the German industry, compared in relative terms to the US industry, is using between 2 or 3 times more robotics, more digitalization, more automation than the US industry. And at the same time, is creating 2 times more jobs. So that's for me a key conclusion. And the key way to go forward here, of course, some routine tasks and jobs are going to be replaced, but the key response here is education. And with education and with continuous training, this is the way we are going to create jobs with more quality and how we are going to go forward with this digitalization. So again, we see these global trends. The key words are decarbonization and energy efficiency. The enabler is digitalization and Industry 4.0. And the key here is education and continuous training.
Okay, thanks, Javier. I like your presentation because you are thinking about technology as a problem solving, no? Instead of just productivity gains. So I think that here we have a big opportunity. But I have a question. Are we ready in Latin America for this challenge? Because you're referring to global trends. I understand your point about skilling, but what about firms here? Are we ready to absorb all these new technologies? Are we doing this now here in Latin America?
I think that's a very good question. We are clearly following some global trends, but I think with the progress on digital technologies is much easier to adapt because there are some solutions that are implemented globally that you can implement immediately here. And we are seeing some examples regarding digital twins, for example, in the food and beverage and the automotive industry that are already implemented here in Argentina. In the oil and gas arena, which seems to be a traditional era, we are also working with digital twins already in Vaca Muerta. So there are very good examples. Of course, we are in a very, very early stage, but again, the digitalization enables us for an early adoption of the technology, so the opportunities there. For me, the key is the way how we innovate and we find these models to make it happen.
Okay. We heard a lot about the productive sector, we can say, but now we're going to move to consumer goods, something that we know as consumers, right? Because our smartphones, gadgets, and so on. So, Paula?
Good morning, everyone. Let me start by asking you a small question. How many of your consumer choices did you experience this morning before getting here? Any ideas? The truth is that if you picked up your phone this morning and interacted with it for a couple of minutes, you probably interacted or experienced over a dozen of your consumer choices. Not just the device, the carrier, the internet connection, but also a number of applications in social media or in any other area that you would like to think of. Because these little devices are really changing the way we consume, the way we relate to other people, and the way we perform many of the things that we used to do in a completely different way. Some people say that we humans are even outsourcing some of our will to diet, to exercise, to applications that now solve many things for us. And the truth is, we get used to this very quickly, but 5 years ago it was a completely different story. Smartphones have gone from 24% to 75% in just 5 years, which is really amazing. And, this has to do with the fact that we as consumers are going through a period of disruption, a period of complete change. And all stereotypes are being challenged. All the truths or certainties that we used to have are no longer held truths. And so consumers are looking for ultra-personalization. And we see this trend impacting everything we do in brands. We get little girls who now can personalize their dolls to look exactly as themselves, which is fantastic. And in the realm of appliances, electronic appliances, which is where Whirlpool works. This is what the smart house is all about. Having appliances that are connected through the internet, IoT, or even artificial intelligence, which is becoming invisible. But it's getting us as consumers to have easier, freer, and even happier lives. We can not only give our appliances instructions on cooking or washing settings before we get home, so that things are already working and almost ready when we get there, but our appliances can also learn about our favorite settings for different things like air conditioning, and so we almost imperceptible have a real connection with machines around us. And for example, in the case of Whirlpool, we have an appliance, an application that is called Yumly, which basically you can set to give you recommendations and answer the question, what's for dinner, based on the ingredients that you have available in the home. So this is really changing everything around us without much perception on our side. But as the world becomes more and more virtual, there comes a need in consumers for two things. One is a connecting back to reality, and the other thing is some engineered empathy. So we have 1 in 3 consumers who have also already experienced voice commands. We have 66% of consumers who say they would like to interact with a shopping assistant while purchasing online, which, by the way, 62% of Latin Americans are already purchasing online. And very big penetration. 86% of Argentinians get access through the internet, through their smartphones, which again opens a lot of opportunities for brands and companies wanting to relate in a more personal way with consumers. And technology is enabling this in many different ways and progressing. 5 years ago or 6 years ago, we were talking about responsive websites, which is traditional websites that can be seen easily on a cell phone. We all remember kind of trying to enter a website and not being able to read it on a smartphone some years ago. Now we're talking about applications which have a lot more functionality. They are always on. They get personalized because they kind of remember what we users prefer. And they offer a more integrated experience for users because for example, you can purchase online, get reviews, connect to related applications or related content that you're interested in. And this also leads, as I said before, to a need for a more integrated experience for consumers that brands have to build, both in the online and the physical world. And this is what the omni-channel concept is about, offering consumers kind of an integrated and easy flow experience through different devices, different channels, and in every interaction or touch point with a brand. And then comes the question of loyalty. In the past, marketers looked for ways to lock in customers. The idea was to get someone to purchase from you and then find mechanisms so that it would be very expensive or very difficult for a consumer to leave the brand. Nowadays, over 60% of consumers say they actively avoid purchasing from brands that demand a long-term commitment with them. So, like in human relationships, we need to earn our customers' loyalties one day at a time, one interaction at a time. And think of the opportunities this opens up. Many people may have heard about Amazon Prime Wardrobe, where they send you a number of items that you might like, and then you have 5 days to return what you don't like. Or, for example, there are now cover insurance. There's a service that you can use to insure your car, but only for the trips that you take, for infrequent drivers. This is the kind of thing that customers would like. And there is a development that is connected with this, which is marketplace. Brands like Arquette, for example, are not only offering their items to their consumers on their e-store, but they are incorporating other brands on the understanding that consumers like to mix and match, to personalize their outfits or their home decor, sourcing from different brands. So they're including those brands in their e-store to provide the customers with a better experience. And related to this question of loyalty is also what customers expect from brands, which is much more than just good products and a good service. And it has to do with social responsibility, and it has to do with the acceptance that failure is okay on the path to success, on the path to finding much better solutions for your value propositions. And so, in this regard, it's very important for brands to keep an open channel for receiving feedback, then actively have a commitment to continuous improvement and continuous communication and providing their customers with upgrades on their services. So this is what I'd like to share.
Thanks, Paula, for picturing us this Black Mirror-like world. Again, I was thinking, is Latin America ready for absorbing these technologies, for creating business around consumer goods, not only as consumers, way, but what about business there?
Well, again, smartphones mean that we are a click away from anything that is available in the world, practically, in terms of products and some services. Of course, bigger things like a refrigerator, you cannot really, things are not that easy. But yes, when you think of 86% of Argentinians connected on the internet through a cell phone, when you think of the speed with which all of this is happening, I think that in Latin America we usually get technological improvements a little bit slower than in other parts of the world, but it's coming, and some of these things are already available here.
Okay, thanks, Paula. Now we are going to move more to how to support innovation, how to create the capabilities in order to innovate. So, Jorge?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here at this nice city like Buenos Aires once again. Well, the subject is a challenge for everyone. It's even in countries that are well developed, such as Germany, Japan, United States, and many others, they are facing this challenge to adapt their way to produce things as using this new enormous capacity of manufacturing and its related technology offers to us. I think one of the first points that we have to face in our countries is the fact that most of the companies, including the big companies, international companies, they do not have research centers in our countries. Very few ones, they have that. And of course, our domestic companies are also not as much involved in research by themselves. So if this is the case, what we have to do is to help them. Help to prepare these companies, including the international companies, to face this, the challenge of manufacturing. In the case of Brazil, this is very true. We have about 200,000 industrial companies, and few ones have their own research centers. If you do not have a research center, we cannot hire highly qualified people, and we do not do applied research, no innovation, no patents, and no investment. So we have to break this. And it's very well known in our countries that it's usually, people say, it's very difficult for a company to work with universities and vice versa. And this have to be break some place. That's what we decided to do 4 years ago. Then the Embrapa, which is a private enterprise constructed and created by researchers, industrial sector, and the CNI to do this possibility to break this difficult situation. And so Embrapa was created, and what you do, we selected the best groups in the universities and the other research centers, either public or private, that can develop projects with the industries. And as a surprise, this is doing very well. We started 4 years ago. There was about 10 companies, and today is more than 400 big companies. In fact, it's half are big countries, and the other half is divided between middle-sized and small companies and the startups. And what we do, we finance 1/3 of each project. We select the groups, it's very competitive, and we offer to this company what they do not have, the research center. But even those companies which has some research centers, as in the case of Embraer, for instance, They have 16 projects with us. So it means that even when they have 4 good research centers, they usually need some kind of projects that they cannot do by themselves. And these two companies here, for instance, Whipple and Siemens, they work with us in this subject. We have developed a lot of projects with these companies. Also, in other words, they saw that this is a possibility to improve the way they need to develop something that either they cannot do in their own country for several reasons. One very interesting reason is the fact that both Argentina and other Latin American countries and Brazil, we offer a lot of possibilities. It was said here by Roberto Alvarez, so many opportunities that we have to offer to this company if they are not a typical domestic company. By Brazilian law, if they are in Brazil, they're considered Brazilian company. So it facilitates very much. That's why they are doing so many projects. So we are going now for about 600 projects being developed. It is just the beginning, less than 4 years operation. And this is a lot of money involved, and we support 1/3 of each project for no reimbursable grants. So that's one way that we see it's possible to help to prepare the companies to face this big challenge.
Thanks, Jorge. What about the left behind? What about these firms that are unable to connect with you or with the university? I mean, you see some maybe regional disparities or sectoral disparities in the way you engage with these firms? I mean, maybe I understand that maybe for SMEs is harder.
Well, we just support applied research. We do not support any basic research at all. There is a lot of other organizations in Brazil that are similar to CONICET that support the basic research. So we do only work on the applied system and innovation. Of course, innovation involves several steps. One more simple step is just incremental innovation, which is quite not too difficult. Then it comes through. This is really big challenge for all of us. Also, create a Waze or GPS or Facebook is not as simple as you can suppose. But I think it's possible to face these two first steps quite easily.
Okay, so we are here talking about the linkages between knowledge and profits, right? How we create these linkages. So let us finish with Michiharu. If you want to tell us the Japan experience.
Thank you for your kind invitation to this panel. Before joining the Japan Science and Technology Agency, it's kind of a national funding agency, I spent more than 40 years in Hitachi Limited. It's really a manufacturing company of about 100 years old. And I was really a believer of manufacturing industry. Manufacturing should be a core industry and a source of competitiveness, both in developed and developing countries. In developed countries, more service-oriented industry is growing, but in the United States, Germany, Japan, other countries, we are keeping manufacturing as up to 20% of GDPs. It's not easy, but we try to keep that figure. In Japan, 50 years ago, when I joined Hitachi, it's a kind of a transformation at time. Before that, Japan enjoyed low-cost, highly educated labor for high-quality mass production. But then Japan shifted to knowledge-based and then recently service-oriented manufacturing. Knowledge-based manufacturing really leveraged outcomes from universities and national laboratories. It's true, even today. Japan Science and Technology Agency is very keen to support university, national research centers to invent new disruptive technologies. For instance, light-emitting diodes, blue light-emitting diodes. It was invented at Nagoya University by Professor Akasaki and also Dr. Nakamura of Nichiya Chemical. It's an achievement from very fundamental research, but it changed the world. Okay. High efficiency solar battery, high capacity lithium-ion batteries, they came from universities or research laboratories in the private companies from fundamental research. So knowledge-based industry, manufacturing industry really depend on such fundamental researches. But as far as the service-oriented manufacturing, the landscape is a bit different. The design is more important. You know, the definition of a product. A product is not just a box of hardware or software. It's a carrier of services. That's the original definition of product. A product carries services. And iPhone just mentioned, it's not a small tablet. It carries tremendous services to us. So this is the world we are now aiming at. We manufacturing industry should aim at such service-oriented businesses. According to Global Sustainability Report 2017, manufacturing output has increased in most regions of the world, and manufacturing value added, MVA per capita, increased globally by 22% from 2006 to 2005 to 2016. But while MVA per capita has increased globally, broader industrialization has been hampered by intense concentration production in some countries or some regions. And I think that inclusive development of manufacturing is today what we have to pursue. This is not only the case in Africa or in other developing countries. Even in developed countries like Japan, United States, we have manufacturing industry left behind. Business continuity of SMEs, for instance, and revitalization of rural industry are a big challenge for us. In Japan, we have SMEs as much as 70 to 80% of workforce are in SMEs. So it's essential for such SMEs to improve productivity using new technologies, digital technology just mentioned. It's very, very critical. And the government has a special initiative to support SMEs to take digital technologies to improve their productivity. And also about the 30 rural region towns have been selected by the government to design the future development. It's a very tough effort under the aging society in Japan, but we have to make that. So this is what I have to say. But lastly, I'd like to mention one more thing. Yesterday, repeatedly, mindset should be changed for the sustainable society. That's really true. And you remember Wangari Maathai of Kenya, a very famous environmental and political leader in Kenya. She was a Nobel laureate. She got the Nobel Prize in 2004. Was an advocate of Mottainai campaign. Mottainai campaign really consisted of 3 R's. Reduce usage and recycle, for instance, and reduce, reuse, and recycle. Yes, 3 R's. And this is culture Japan has inherited for a long time. But today, from generation to new generation, it's I'm afraid it's disappearing. So we have to have a kind of intense education at elementary schools levels. How important it is to have a Mottainai campaign in Japan and also worldwide. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michiharu, for your very interesting presentation. We have 4 minutes, and I have some questions from the audience, but it has to be quick, your answers. One from you, Javier. Here says, the Siemens guy, that's you. You talk a lot about education and reskilling, but maybe it's easier for digital natives, for the youth, but it's not that easy for those that have been working in manufacturing maybe for the last 20 years, that now they're in their 40-something or 50s. So how can we reskill these non-digital natives? It's a complex, I know. You have 1 minute.
No, it's a very good question, but I will reply with some practical example that we are already working today. Together with the education minister of the Buenos Aires province, we have launched a short career. It's 3 years. It's focused on energy and digitalization, because we are detecting that we will need digital capabilities for our future projects and for our current projects. And this is why I said the key is education. And actually, it's less than 30% the people which are digital natives, rather than the other 70% is people that is already working with current projects that are taking the time to upgrade their capabilities. And this is already happening. So I would say the digital natives have kind of advantage, because we see our kids are playing every time with the technology. It's kind of natural thing. They cannot even imagine how they live without that. But if there is a clear process and a clear capability that you need to adapt, I'm seeing examples of old people taking that.
Okay, yeah, maybe this idea of lifelong learning. I mean, we need to start thinking about that. And maybe the Sherman model is the right way to go. You know? I have another one for Jorge about how you measure the risk return and return of your projects. I mean, and how do you bear this risk?
Well, one aspect that attracts us very much is the fact that in this subject, we are not too far from the most developed countries because they are also begin this process and all the technology that are available. So for everyone, if you have a country like Argentina or Chile, Brazil, and some others in Latin America, they have good universities, they have good centers for research. They dominate most of these technologies. So it's just a question of the companies to work with them, and then we'll be giving a lot of good response as it happened to us in Brazil.
Okay, so we don't have more time, so just give us an applause to our panelists here.
Very much. Thank you very much. Ramiro, thank you very much for staying on schedule. Thank you.